The Long Way Home, Chapter 3, Taking Flight. It was a couple of days until the unmanned pirate vessel translated into real space according to the course set by the dead men, for unknown reasons. A couple of days in which Jason largely tried to keep the other kids from bothering the reluctant host. Or more accurately, seeing just how much of a man drank. And that he had to lead a few more supply-gathering expeditions. For all that Vincent had said about sometimes finding survivors and hostages, he didn't seem to have much in the way of sheets or blankets aboard the Long Way, and she only had 2 spare berths in the cramped room besides the head and across the short corridor from Vincent's cabin. He declared Vincent's cabin off limits for obvious reasons, and the spare cabin the girls' room for other obvious reasons. There had been a short argument when Stowaway tried to say that it ought to be the other way around, but Jason had simply insisted that his little cousin isn't sleeping on the couch, and she isn't sharing a room with a boy. And he's not making Vi sleep on the couch either. He had thought the arrangements were obvious, but he explained to the surly Corvian that the girls were getting the berths. He'd get the couch, and Jason himself would sleep on the deck. Then there was an argument for the girls over whether Jason should be the one to sleep on the sofa or Stowaway to sleep on the floor. Eventually, it came down to, because I'm the oldest, and I say so. Nobody seemed at all happy with that, except maybe Stowaway, but he was busy pretending to be grumpy. Days of waiting dragged on as Vincent prepared for his voyage. His adaptive ballistic weave suit needed to be cleaned, and so did his garret. His son's old knife didn't need sharpening, but he ran its keen edge over a ceramic hone and stropped it anyway. His surplus RNI boarding shotgun needed to be broken down, cleaned, reassembled, and stored safely, and the rest of his firearms didn't exactly need all the extra care, but it kept his eyes and hands busy. There were 1,000 little tasks he could complete over a couple of days in the company of a bottle to not have to be around 4 living sources of salt in old wounds. 1,000 little tasks, and if they'd already been done, he'd just do them again. The tasks in the bottle company had to be set aside, however, as they neared the unknown destination. The George boy had asked whether he'd checked the pirates' nav systems to see where they were headed, and he didn't bother and said so. Who cares where the pirates were going? Wherever it was wouldn't be useful to him, and wouldn't be friendly to the kids, so he'd run a quick calc and set course for the nearest station or planet. He made it clear to the kid that they'd be on their way back to their families and out of this hair as soon as possible. As soon as possible. To that end, he'd set up the hangar bay door to open as soon as the translation was complete and pumped the Atmo into storage. He wasn't bothered with the last step, but he didn't want to breathe scuffing the long ways paint during decompression. He would just take off, get to MSD, and translate to hyperspace. C. Easy. Unfortunately, as the great blast doors yawned open into the inky black of an unknown system, the kids crowded around behind the pilot's chair. Not much to see, Vincent grunted. It's only space. Aye, but it's us getting away from the ship, so I figure it's kind of a big deal, the George boy said. That's so? That. And I like watching the translation in hyperspace slip by outside the bubble, the kid said with a shrug. But that's just me. It's like setting out, the Letray girl said. Sure, whatever, Vincent sighed. Just don't touch anything. Aye, mister, the George kid said flatly, the brat. The Long Way came to life beneath the hands on the yoke. She easily lifted away from the filthy deck and vacuum, and since Vincent didn't much care about the property of dead pirates, he gunned her at full thrust and darted into the open void. He got his nav computer running calcs for the shortest course through hyperspace C and said, There. Now we just need to make MSD, and you're already halfway home. What's that? The star-sailor girl asked as she pointed one of her azure hands at one of his censored readouts. Looks like there's a vessel in system, he muttered. We shouldn't be here long enough for them to care. Shouldn't your calcs be coming up green by now? The stoic kid asked. Maybe, maybe not, the George boy told the other boy. Most nav computers use previous courses data to help laying the next course and calculating a translation point. At least that's what my Uncle Brickstroll says, so I'll figure it'd take a little longer than usual. Yeah, Vincent murmured as he narrowed his eyes to the display showing the vessel in system closing in. Sit tight. Won't be long. Tran, the George kid said in a hushed near whisper. Get the others and yourself strapped in somewhere. All's in. Aye, sir, the girl answered, and began to lead the other 2 kids back towards the main room, where they'd properly strap in to the couch or dinnet. And the George boy slid into the co-pilot's seat and began strapping himself in. Sirring me like that, she ought to know better, the kid grumbled. and she was so nonplussed at the hypercritical little brat that he didn't hear the lock-on alarm and beep-beep-beep to his ears. The boy's eyes went wide, his teeth were bared in a rictus snarl, and he took the yoke in his hands and twisted just in time to avoid a tractor beam springing to life just ahead of the long way. Vincent shook his head, took the pilot's yoke in his hands, and began to make the long way dance. That didn't stop him from noticing Jason's trembling hands leap away from the yoke as soon as Vincent retook control. He couldn't help but hear the boy's laboring panting, from smelling his cold sweat, and from knowing that he'd just come through a moment of sheer deadly terror. The long way was alive under his hands. He darted and rolled around a large vessel's attempts to seize her, and the closing distance between them began to widen again. However, on screen that display of magnified visual of the pursuing vessel he saw the scorched 24 fighters. Status change, the boy in the co-pilot's seat shouted through shaky voice. Enemy interceptors detected. Calcs no good. Repeat, calcs no good. Computer cannot find nearest friendly planet or station. Running emergency calcs now. Vincent put the nose the long way away from the hostiles and gunned it at maximum, thrust while corkscrewing to avoid incoming tractor beams as the intercom came alive, and the star-sated girl's voice chimed like a bell amongst the various alerts and alarms clamoring for attention. Reactors at half capacity, shield generators splitting up. I was going to bypass the governor, but it looks like someone already did. I thought I told you to strap in, the kid snapped. Vincent was impressed with how he kept his fear out of his voice. I'm between tethers, sir. Quit sirring me. Well, since you're down there, pull climate control. Go to emergency lighting and shunt that power to the shields. Aye, sir. Little brat, the boy grumbled as he reached over and cancelled a few hundred calcs that obviously had no chance of coming up green, and got new ones going. You got any weapons on this boat? You see anywhere to store ammo, kid? What kind of pirate hunter sails in an unarmed ship? The kind that doesn't get into space battles. Interceptors closing. Tran, the other two strapped in? Aye, sir. We need more speed. Prepare to go free fall on my mark. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Vincent could feel the artificial gravity cut out, and a moment of weightlessness was followed by being slammed into the back of his seat by the sudden burst of speed from the rerouted power. He snarled through the forces acting on his body. How are the calcs coming? Coming up red, mister. Possibly in 1 amber. And 1 amber, no green. Repeat, no green. Vincent's vision was tunneling as he was pressed into his seat as he backed away from the trio of interceptors. Shields held, but he spun to disperse the hits anyway. Black spots started to creep into his periphery of his vision. Punch it! He shouted. The long way shuddered from the stem to stern as her hyperdrive tore a hole in real space, and she slid into a hyperspace sea in a flash of swirling rainbow color. And Vincent handed control over the nav computer's course. They made it. The swirling colors of hyperspace colliding with the reality bubble generated by the hyperdrive filled the view screen. But Jason had his eyes clamped shut against the swimming of his head. He had his teeth clamped shut against their chattering. He held his fist close to his chest, against his fingers trembling. Now that they come through the danger, his body wanted him to know that he was filled from head to toe with pants-wetting terror. He did his best to master himself. However, he found it wasn't enough. He tasted bile and had scant seconds to lean over and at least ensure his vomit didn't coat anything important. The simultaneous return of artificial gravity was marginally helpful. Please don't tell the others, Jason muttered with an acrid taste still across his tongue. Easy, kid, Vincent said from behind him. Deep breaths. It's okay to be afraid. I know that, Jason snorted. It's not about me. Got to keep morale up, and if they know just how afraid I was, well, I don't know what will happen exactly, but I figure on it being bad. Don't worry about it, kid. Secret's safe with me. Catch your breath and then go wash your mouth out and get some water in you. I'll worry about the mess. Aye, mister. Thanks. Thought I told you to cool it with the ice, sirs, kid. Jason turned his gaze on the shaggy old dogger man in confusion and answered, I did cool it, mister. You just said aye earlier. We're a sailing family, mister. We talk like it, Jason said with a glare. Fine, whatever, kid. Stop calling me mister. All pretense of keeping a brave face, by the way, as Jason blanched and stammered, No. What if, no, when Nana finds out, she'll blister my ears from stern to stem. Just call me mister less often then, kid. Jason didn't say anything to that. He just ran his eyes over Vincent's graying muzzle, his balding pet, and his thrice-broken tail, and raised an eyebrow. Shut up, kid. I'm not old. Whatever you say, mister, Jason said, as he keyed the intercom to talk to Trandry in the engine room. Tran, you okay in there? Aye. Just a little bruising from the tether harness. I'll be okay. The other two? Haven't seen, sir. I said quit sirring me. From the pilot's chair, Vincent burst out laughing at him. Jason shot an affronted scowl to the old man's way, which obviously made him laugh all the harder. After all that about mister, you're gonna... And here he wheezed with laughter. Jason leaned over to punch him, but his arms were too soft. Shut up, I'm not an officer. You said so yourself, Jason snarled. Easy, kid. You pout that way, it might stick on your face. Vincent laughed as Jason worked to unbuckle himself from the co-pilot's chair. I'll go make sure everyone's okay, Jason said, with an affronted grace, and tried to ignore the stifled laughter following him from the cockpit where Vincent stayed behind. Everyone else was gathered in the galley, which pulled double duty as sitting or TV room, like in most shore crew craft, and Jason had his temper in rein by the time he'd reached them. Jason, Chandray said brightly, how long's the jump? Couple hours or maybe a day at most. Could only get an amber calc. What's that supposed to mean? Stowaway asked as he preened his feathers with his wing claws primly. Chandray's eyes went wide with undisguised worry as she answered, That's the nav computer couldn't calculate a previously charted course. By's tail slapped the deck as she stammered, Really? Aye, Jason said as he puffed out his chest. But we got away, and they can't follow. We have a couple of weeks' worth of food aboard. So, even if we have to orbit while the nav computers try to figure out where we are, we'll be fine. Let's hope there's a habitable planet in system so that we can stretch our legs, though. But what did we get away from? Stowaway asked doubtfully. Probably the pirates' customers, Chandray mumbled as she reached out to clasp Jason's hand. He was careful to not squeeze too hard when he returned the grips with her. Jason was so relieved that everyone was okay that his knees felt a little wobbly. He stood up straight anyway. He had to. End of chapter. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.